You're listening to the ESP, the European Skeptics Podcast, an independent weekly show set out to bring you news, interesting topics and interviews with people mostly from Europe, building bridges and breaking down language barriers to show the world how active and awesome the skeptical movement is in the region. This is episode 517. I'm your host, András Pinter, and joining me for the show is my co-host, Pontus Böckman. See ya!
Hey son, Anders, I'm beginning to think that you're not mostly from Europe. You're mostly calling in from someplace else. Is it Hong Kong?
It is currently Hong Kong that I'm calling in from. I'm sitting in a small, teeny, tiny hotel room. Everything is so tiny when it comes to spaces in this country.
Uh-huh.
Well, this is a special administrative region of the Republic of China.
Yeah.
Well, there are interesting consequences of that. One of them is that not all of the usual tools that you tend to use back home work here. For example, do you often use ChatGPT?
Yeah, well, yes, I do from time to time. Not every day, but quite a lot. A couple of times a week. Yeah.
You would have to forget that here. No, it doesn't work. It's not available in this region.
No, you have to think for yourself.
Same goes for Google Gemini.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of things don't work. There's a lot of censorship going on. So this is how independent this special administrative region is. I remind you that it was supposed to keep its political independence from the People's Republic of China's central government until 2047. And that's basically gone. So it's not happening.
Right. Okay.
It's already completely transformed.
Do you have to be careful now, or maybe you'll get arrested for saying something?
For saying all this?
Yes.
We'll find out soon enough.
Yes, that'll be very interesting. I'm recording from this side as well, so if anything happens, we will have it on camera until they pull your things to pieces. Anyway, Anders, I have good news for you.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is true now, that this is the first episode, and we've been doing this for over 10 years, right? This is the first episode that I only have positive stories to talk about. Isn't that lovely?
Good for you. Oh, that means that I know already that we have a really right today.
Yes, it is a really right.
That's a good thing to have.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I have something else to share with you, and that is a call to action by Skeptical Science. So for those of you who don't know, Skeptical Science is not only a website focusing on making sure that the facts are straight with regards to climate information. They tackle climate misinformation in a brilliant way. There are these rebuttals that they have published, and they are published on several different levels so that your communication is made easier when it comes to trying to help people sort the fact from fiction. And they have a lot of translations for these rebuttals as well. But they are now kind of revamping the website. So they want to update their translations as well.
Mm-hmm.
So this is why they are calling for translators to make themselves known to the team, basically led by Barbara Winkler, whom we had on the show. And the whole project is also partly led by John Cook, whom we also had on this show before.
Of course, yes.
And he's a psychologist who works in climate misinformation, and the psychology of debunking, for example, is very well known, works a lot together with Stephen Lewandowski, whom we also had on the show. So this is an amazing project, and if you want to make a difference, you should apply to provide them with translations. And the translations that they already have for different languages are brilliant. So from Chinese to Croatian, Czech, Danish, Dutch, Finnish, French, German, Hebrew, Hungarian, Icelandic, Indonesian, Italian, Japanese, Korean, Macedonian, Norwegian, Polish, Portuguese, Russian, Slovakian, Slovenian, Spanish, Swedish, and Thai. So it's absolutely amazing. And the amount of work that has been put in that is brilliant. And these rebuttals are written in a way that really make your job easier when you want to debunk and communicate what the real science says instead of what the general beliefs are. So, I do recommend you get in touch with them. And the best way to do that is to go on our website, follow the link, which we will have on the show notes for this episode, and just find out how to get in touch with Barbara Winkler and make a difference.
Please do. It's a great project.
It is indeed. So, are you up to anything special in the next couple of days? Do you have some special plans?
Me? Personally?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I have a lot of things to do, of course, every day.
Are you going anywhere near Southern Europe?
No, I'm not.
No? Okay. Not a big deal. Because I'll be commemorating something that is, happening sometime around these days. But let's move on to This Week in Skeptical History then, to find out what it is. So, okay, the 5th of February, which is, for me, the day of the recording of this episode. For you, it's a day earlier.
Yes, I'm recording in the past.
Yeah, just to make clear what's going on. To me, the current time is 5:12 in the morning, and it's 10:12 p.m. for Pontus. It takes a bit of scheduling to do this show.
It does, indeed.
Especially with one of us traveling all the time. Yeah, so with that out of my system, which is very, very important, I'd like to commemorate something that is happening on the 5th of February. And that is the feast of Santa Agatha of Sicily. And when we're talking about that, we are actually diving into the messy intersection of historical fact, religious tradition, and the human need for meaning. We're traveling back to Sicily in the year 251 AD. And I have to warn you that the story we're about to examine is considerably more complicated than centuries of devotion might suggest. But let me start with the basics. Saint Agatha was almost certainly a real person who died in Catania, Sicily, around 251 AD, during one of history's first organized empire-wide persecutions of Christians. This part is pretty solid about the story because Emperor Decius, convinced that Rome's problems stemmed from insufficient piety toward the old gods, issued an edict in 250 AD requiring all imperial subjects to sacrifice, essentially a religious loyalty test. And Christians, obviously, following the teachings of Christ, faced an unenviable choice. They had the choice of abandoning their faith, bribing officials for fake certificates, which may or may not have worked, or face arrest, torture, and finally, death. So Agatha, according to legend, chose option 3. So she was willing to die for her religious beliefs. And here's where things get interesting. And by interesting, I mean textually a little bit murky. The most detailed account of her martyrdom comes from a document called the Passio Sanctae Agathae, or Passion of Saint Agatha. But the problem with this is that the earliest surviving illustrated version of this dates to the late 10th century. See where the problem is?
Yeah, that's somewhat of a problem. So that would be like us writing something about something that happened in the 1400s or something.
Well, as long as your facts are straight and you have evidence to back up your statements about things happening a couple of hundred years ago, that's fine. But working with texts composed roughly 700 years after the death of someone back in the Middle Ages was not necessarily scientifically that sound. So before that, brief mentions appear in early martyrologies from the 5th and the 6th centuries, which were still at least 200 to 300 years after the fact. It's not rock solid. And the inconvenient truth about this is that scholars have concluded that these accounts are not historically reliable. What a surprise. The oldest sources show signs of literary convention rather than eyewitness reporting, which honestly you'd expect from hagiographic literature anyway. But yeah. This whole genre basically requires dramatic tortures and miraculous intervention, so not necessarily just factual reporting of the event. So what does the legend actually say happened? According to the Passio, Agatha supposedly rejected the romantic advances of Quintianus, the Roman governor of the area, because she'd taken a vow of virginity and devotion to Christ instead. Enraged about this, Quintianus accused her of being a Christian, which during that period of active persecution against Christians was a convenient weapon. He allegedly had her imprisoned in a brothel for 30 days to, well, convince her otherwise. I don't know what they wanted to achieve with that. Never mind. So when that failed, Quintianus ordered increasingly elaborate tortures against her beloved Agatha. She was stretched on a rock, torn with iron hooks, burned with torches, and finally, and this is the detail that defines her entire legacy, her breasts were cut off with pincers.
Ouch.
Ouch. Yeah. But here's where the miracle narrative kicks in, because St. Peter allegedly appeared to Agatha in a vision and healed her wounds. Now, when we want to apply some skeptical thinking here, we have a story written centuries after the event, found in no contemporary Roman documents, containing supernatural elements and designed explicitly to inspire faith and devotion. So, from a historical evidence standpoint, we're essentially in the realm of religious literature, not history, obviously. This doesn't mean Agatha didn't die for her faith. The broader context of Decian's persecution is well documented. So the overall picture of the times seems to be correct, but the specifics are really unknowable, if we're honest, and the torture narrative specifically fits a predictable hagiographic template. So it's like any other hagiographic stories, the stories of these martyrs, saints from the early period. One of the most fascinating logical fallacies embedded in her veneration is, one of my favorites is post hoc ergo propter hoc, which is after this, therefore because of this. Agatha dies in 2251. About a year later, in 252, Mount Etna, which is very close to Catania, erupts. And according to the legend, terrified Catanians processed with Agatha's veil towards the approaching lava, and miraculously, the flow stopped.
Oh, very convenient.
So, very convenient. Post hoc ergo propter hoc, right? Except the geological reality seems to be, because the research on the lavas can actually reveal information about how it happened, what actually happened. And it looks like the 252 eruption wasn't especially dangerous, and Catania was not in that much of a danger by the lava flow.
Well, that's because they had this magical veil to save the city. Yeah. That's why it didn't happen.
Yeah, we don't know if that was actually the case that it happened, but it might have been processed at precisely the moment nature was taking its course anyway. But this is, as I said, textbook post hoc reasoning. Event A is the veil procession, precedes event B, which is the lava stopping, therefore A caused B.
Obvious.
It's the logical equivalent of that rooster that thinks it causes the sunrise. And for 13 centuries, Catanians have attributed their volcanic safety to Agatha's intervention. It's touching, genuinely. It's also a masterclass in how humans find patterns and causations in coincidence. Now let's talk about something delightfully weird, because this is still skeptical history, and weird is often where the truth hides. During the Feast of St. Agatha, which is celebrated between February the 3rd and February the 5th, one of the most prominent ceremonial foods is the cassatella di Sant'Agata. In Sicilian dialect, cassatella means little box, but that's not what they're colloquially called. The traditional name is Minuzzi Sant'Agata, St. Agatha's breasts. So these are basically breast-shaped pastries, specifically designed and decorated. This is basically a sponge cake, which is soaked in rosolia liquor filled with ricotta, chocolate drops, and candied fruit, covered in white icing and topped with a candied cherry. Can you guess what the candied cherry
I can guess, yes.
Stands for?
Yes.
I mean, what it represents.
Yeah, there's a little nipple there.
Little nipples, exactly. So, and they're actually quite delicious.
I'm sure they are.
And, yeah, well, it's certainly a feat of baking craft. Isn't that weird?
But it's a big tradition in Christianity, right? You eat the body of Christ and you eat the body, apparently, of Saint Agatha. So, yeah. Yeah, there's a bit of cannibalism in that religion.
Yeah. Or you at least eat the body parts that have been cut off, which is even weirder because I don't know if it's weirder, but it's still weird. It's rarely discussed in rational analysis that the psychology and the kind of relationship between trauma symbol and food, it's so devoted Christian in its approach. But it's the Casatella, or the Minuzzi, don't merely commemorate Agatha's martyrdom. It aesthetically recreates the central horror of the whole narrative. The pastry literally embodies her mutilation. And Catanians have been eating symbolic representations of a saint's severed body parts for centuries. And yeah, it's kind of disturbing.
Yeah, they could have settled for lava cake.
Yeah. So would have been less weird. And there are interesting things to find over there. There is a liquor that is called Fuoco dell'Etna. It's a very strong liquor that basically means the fire of Etna. And it's colored red as well. So, just to sum up, what's happening here is a poorly documented martyr from the 3rd century, whose torture narrative exists only in medieval hagiographic text, has been transformed through centuries of ritual and artistic expression into a city's defining symbol, but the mythology surrounding her, the earthquake that saved her, the veil that stopped the volcano, rests on logical fallacies about causation, and the entire complex is reinforced annually through festival processions and edible symbolism that is borderline cannibalism. So, is her story completely fabricated? Probably not. Did she die for her faith during Decian persecution? Possibly. Were her breasts cut off specifically by Quintianus according to the detailed narrative, the Impatio? That's where evidence evaporates and legend begins. But that is what they commemorate on the 5th of February every year. Right. So, there you go. Long live Saint Agatha and the Minuzzi. Which is a good kind of cake, by the way. So I quite like it. But not for the shape and what it represents, but because it's yummy. Okay, moving on from the Minuzzi di Sant'Agata to the news.
Yes, so I don't know how much our listeners have noticed it, but gaming addiction has been in the news lately, a couple of years actually. It probably took off after WHO included gaming disorder in the ICD-11, the International Classification of Diseases, version 11, that was adopted in 2022. According to the WHO definition, the diagnosis of gaming disorder is characterized as a behavior pattern that is severe enough that it results in significant impairment to a person's function in personal, family, social, educational, occupational, and other important areas. Of course, that's a quote. In addition, this pattern should normally have been evident for at least 12 months or so. So, according to WHO, this follows development of research in this area. And the reason to include it in the ICD-11 is to increase attention among health professionals. However, they say that, quote, studies suggest that gaming disorder affects only a small proportion of people who engage in digital or video gaming activities. A small proportion, they say. Therefore, it made the headlines when a new study in January stated that it is much worse than the WHO is saying. This new study included 5,300 Swedish teenagers aged 15 to 17 years old and evaluated their behavior using something called GDT, or the Gaming Disorder Test. Well, that sounds like it's made for a thing. It probably is. I don't know exactly what it entails, but it is apparently a short and easy to use test suitable to conduct with young people in school settings. So there you go. The results were pretty scary. 12% of the girls in the study and 44% of the boys exhibited behavior that the researchers labeled in the risk zone of gaming disorder. Also, the study found that self-esteem was not a major contributing factor to gaming disorder, something that has been a major focus in other research. Instead, the researchers found that lifestyle was a main factor to watch out for. So, all right, 44% of all boys between 15 and 17 years of age have lifestyles that put them in danger of developing gaming disorder. That's a lot. But, hang on. These findings have not gone unchallenged. Even if the study has gotten a lot of attention, it has also been criticized. The percentage of people at risk in this study is 20 times higher than in other research. That is strange, a little bit of a red flag. Two researchers called Annika Hofstedt and Anna Söderpalm-Gård, there will be a spelling competition later on, they have now come forward to say that the study is fundamentally flawed. They say that the study puts much too much emphasis on the number of hours spent playing, and also the study ignores positive effects of gaming, because there are positive effects as well. People who have a lot of free time on their hands, they can use gaming as a good outlet, and it's a good way to keep up a social network as well. It could be, anyway. And they say that it's not the time spent in front of the console or the computer that makes gaming a disorder. What makes it a disorder is if it affects how well you function in your day-to-day activities. You can play for a lot of hours without being dysfunctional.
And also there are positive effects like developing certain skills through gaming as well. So that's right. Motoric and otherwise. So, yeah.
That's correct. They didn't mention that, but that's correct. Also, one problem with the study, they say, is that it didn't use a defined threshold value for what constitutes a gaming disorder. So according to these critics, this makes the outcome very arbitrary, and they say that a more realistic result is that only 2% are in risk of developing a gaming disorder. But to be fair, I'm not sure how they arrived at that number. So numbers are all over the place. So what can we take away from this? Well, even if WHO has included gaming disorder in their international classification of diseases, we still don't know enough to say exactly how risky gaming is or what is a risky behavior. But the results of this new study should be taken with a huge grain of salt, even if it has gotten a lot of publicity. So more research is needed, as we say, and I think it's fair to say that 44% of all 15 to 17-year-old boys are probably not in the risk zone of developing gaming disorder, which you may have heard.
Okay, I don't know if our listeners have heard, but there have been recent developments regarding a topic that is very close to our hearts. We've been discussing that a lot on this show, and that is about conversion practices or conversion therapies that are completely nonsensical, and they don't make any sense from a scientific point of view. And this week, why I'd like to mention this is that this week the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe has taken a strong stance against so-called conversion practices.
Good.
And just to sum up what they are, is these are attempts to change, repress, or suppress someone's sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression. And the move by the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe really speaks directly to evidence-based policy and standing up for human rights. And it's very relevant to us who care about how bad science is often used to justify harmful actions. So what happened was on the 29th of January, the Assembly, which is, I'd like to remind everyone that this is the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, so it's not a European Union decision or resolution. So the Council of Europe is basically another international organization that is there to try to uphold human rights, democratic values, and the rule of law in Europe. And it was founded in 1949. It's basically Europe's oldest intergovernmental organization. And it represents 46 European member states with a combined population of approximately 745 million people as of this year. So it's a pretty big organization. It's very important what they do there, but it's independent from the European Union. Now, with that cleared up, I'd like to go back to what happened in their resolution numbered 2643 that was adopted on the 29th of January. And this assembly called on the governments of all 46 member states of the Council of Europe to prohibit these practices and to introduce criminal sanctions against them. And when they talk about conversion practices, this is an umbrella term. It can include pseudo-psychological counseling, religious rituals, so-called therapy sessions, some aversive technique, and a range of coercive and abusive methods, all with the goal of trying to make an LGBTQ plus person, straight or cis, that fits more into their general worldview, people's general worldview. So, from a skeptical and scientific point of view, that whole goal of trying to make someone what they're not fails on at least two fronts. First of all, the resolution explicitly states that these practices have absolutely no scientific basis. There is no credible evidence that you can change a person's sexual orientation or gender identity through any form of therapy, let alone prayer or behavior conditioning or...
How about exorcism?
Anything. Exorcism, that works. That does work.
I'm sure.
It's scientifically proven to work. And obviously this matches the consensus of major medical and psychological organizations as well. So it's good on the assembly that they use the scientific consensus to back up their statement. Secondly, the assembly underlines that the now well-documented harms are also there. Increased rates of depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, suicidal ideations, and even suicide attempts among people subjected to such, let's call them treatments in inverted commas. So, in other words, we are not just talking about something ineffective, we are talking about something that is actively dangerous and harmful. And the assembly also makes an important point about the conversion practices being not just isolated bad actors, but they have the potential to reinforce the idea that being lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, or otherwise gender diverse is a pathological phenomenon or a defect that needs to be cured, which is just not the case. For skeptics used to seeing how pseudoscience feeds stigma, think of how reparative therapy was marketed using misrepresented studies and long discredited diagnostic categories. This is a familiar pattern. This resolution calls this out clearly and treats it as an issue of personal autonomy and the right to respect for private and family life. So what the Council of Europe actually trying to achieve in practice is that they urge states to adopt clear, comprehensive legal definitions that cover conversion practices in healthcare, education, religious and commercial settings, and to back that up with criminal law where appropriate. It recommends complaint procedures to be introduced, monitoring mechanisms, civil measures such as protection orders, and bans on advertising and online promotion of conversion services. It even invites states to tackle cross-border issues by extending prohibitions to referrals to practitioners operating in other jurisdictions. That is the wording of the actual resolution. So what it actually means is that people often turn to practitioners in other countries other than their own, so that they can avoid that jurisdictional issue. And the text also recognizes that law alone is not enough. It calls for cooperation with civil society, professional bodies, and religious institutions as well, and for training of health professionals, educators, religious leaders, well, good luck with that, law enforcement and prosecutors, so they can identify conversion practices and respond effectively. So when it comes to specialized victim support services, that's very important as well. Survival networks and more research and data collection on how prevalent these practices are and what their impacts are. So the emphasis here is on data, monitoring, and professional education. And that is a positive sign, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's just not just symbolic, it's an attempt to create feedback loops that can be evaluated over time. So, yeah. And that one more thing that is very important here. The assembly also tries to draw a line between harmful conversion and legitimate support. I mean, conversion attempts are not legitimate support. It's not like you're trying to help that person. You're trying to help yourself, who's a bigot. So it's not the actual help that is needed by these people. And this is why it's important that the resolution explicitly states that bans should not limit supportive interventions by parents, the aforementioned religious organizations, or qualified clinicians, as long as those interventions do not seek to change, repress, or suppress someone's sexual orientation, gender identity, or expression.
Yeah.
So, politically and legally, there is also a reality check of this, because the resolutions are recommendations and appeals to the national parliaments of the member states, but we know how diverse they can be. We can name a couple of examples as to how much they care about resolutions like this, because it's not binding. It's not something that can be enforced. And the resolution passed with 71 votes in favor and 26 against, and 2
so it wasn't unanimous anyway.
Yeah, it wasn't. We'll see how it goes. But at least it's clear that this resolution is based on what the current scientific consensus is. And that's, for us skeptics, is what really matters.
Yeah, so we'll file that as one of the good news items, a positive news item.
Exactly. So might as well be one of the really good, really right. Yeah.
Yeah, so I have another good news, or something that has been reported as bad, but it actually isn't as bad. Many reports in the last couple of years have said that young people are returning to church, and we don't think that's good news.
Bullshit.
Yeah, so the word is that church attendance is going up, and the religious community, of course, celebrating this. Especially the Bible Society in the UK reported something using YouGov data not long ago, comparing 2018 to 2024. And apparently this data showed that churchgoing was going up in all age groups, but particularly among the young, which was both surprising and a little bit alarming to us, atheists. But not so fast, because new data has come to light. And this time from the 2024 British Social Attitudes Survey, the BSA. BSA is considered the gold standard of social research surveys in the UK. They are using probability-based random sampling instead of online opt-in panels. It's based on online data collection with telephone as backup option, and data is carefully weighed and validated. So, sounds good. So
BSA is not BS. Okay.
No, BSA is not good. BS. They also publish data sets in full, so you can look into it yourself. That's something that the Bible Society did not do with the YouGov poll. So anyway, this new report reflects the part of the population who describe themselves as Christian and go to church at least once a month. And lo and behold, the percentage of self-described Christians who regularly go to church has instead fallen from 12% to 9% on average between these 2 years. In the youngest age group, the 18 to 24-year-olds, the percentage has gone from 8% to 3%, which is miles below the 16% that the Bible Society wanted to claim.
Yeah, well, saying things that are not based on truth and facts is really their thing. So are we surprised at all?
Well, maybe a little bit, because there is more. The Church of England, they are also religious, I'm told. They have published their own, quote, Statistics for Mission report for 2024. And they also conclude that attendance is actually going down. They have a church statistician, Dr. Ken Eames, I think that's how it's pronounced. He wrote, quote, as the Statistics for Mission figures clearly demonstrate, by almost every measure, in almost every diocese, Church of England attendance and participation was still significantly lower in 2024 than in 2018. So in this report, only 12% of the churches report that the regular Sunday attendance were higher, but 48%, so almost half of the other churches, they reported lower attendance. So there have been TikTok posts, I am told, but don't use TikTok as a news source. But these posts have highlighted a few churches where attendance by young people has gone up. And this is probably part of where the rumors are coming from. But it seems to be exceptions. And those same TikTok posts have given rise to a rumor that Bible sales have gone up because of sales to young people. But that has no source at all. I think that's just something that somebody assumed or wanted to claim. Mm-hmm. So, yes, you may have heard that there is a Christian revival going on, but that seems to be contradicted by the facts. Humanists UK Chief Executive Andrew Copsom, whom we've had on the show, several years ago now, it was on episode number 12. Can you believe it?
Oh, God.
Yeah.
So long ago.
Well, but we're still around. He's still around. And this is his comment on the Humanists UK webpage. Quote, "It is clearer than ever that recent claims of a wide-scale Christian revival, whether misinformation or disinformation, need to be retracted." End quote. And he also added that everyone has the obligation to be rigorous in their presentation of data in the public realm and the claims they make for it. Yes, that goes for all kind of data, not just in this case. If you want to present data, you have to be very, very rigorous and make sure that your claims is supported by the data you're quoting. Good work, Andy.
Wow, but it's so blatant lies there, masquerading as conclusions from a data set. It's like, come on, guys. You can do better than this.
Yeah.
So, I'd like to look at something that is also built on supposed miracles.
Yeah.
Like most of religions. But this one turns out to be anything but. And I'm talking about MMS, or Miracle Mineral Solution.
Is that still around?
It
My
is
God,
still around,
I thought
apparently.
we were rid of that now.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's difficult to get rid of things like that. These practices are not based on recommendations supported by evidence. It's based on weird beliefs. So, long-time listeners will probably have heard of MMS in the context of using this to treat autism, different cancers, or even COVID, because that's how it's been aggressively marketed for a couple of years now.
It's a miracle solution, after all.
Exactly. The name is, the key's in the title. So, a new study from Wrocław Medical University, reported this week, gives us some of the clearest experimental evidence so far that MMS is essentially a toxic disinfectant which only works at doses that also damage human cells, so please don't do that. So, let's start with making clear what MMS is, chemically speaking. Despite the friendly name, it's basically industrial chemistry in a bottle. MMS is a 28% solution of sodium chloride, a strong oxidizing agent, which is used in things like water treatment and bleaching. Followers are told to activate it by adding an acid, which is often citric acid or vinegar, or hydrochloric acid, which converts it into chlorine dioxide, which is another powerful oxidizing chemical. And that's great if you want to disinfect the water system or bleach paper pulp, but it's not something you want in your stomach, and let alone your bloodstream. So obviously regulators have been warning about this for years. Health agencies in the US, UK, Canada, and elsewhere have all pointed out that when used as directed, MMS effectively becomes industrial strength bleach, and people taking it report severe nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, dehydration, and dangerously low blood pressures. In more serious cases, it can damage the gut and red blood cells, and there have been life-threatening reactions and at least one death associated with its use. So sellers routinely spin these obvious toxic effects as evidence of detoxification, and some kind of proof that the product is working. Well, chemically speaking, it does, but but it doesn't do what it's promised. So this could be very familiar to anyone who follows alternative medicine scams, because this is the very same pattern. But what's new in the recent work from Wrocław is that they provide a detailed, controlled look at what the MMS chemistry actually does to living tissues and bacteria at realistic concentrations. The researchers studied acidified sodium chloride, essentially the MMS mixture, prepared in 2 versions and tested it on a range of bacterial strains, including disease-causing bacteria like Staphylococcus aureus and E. coli, Escherichia coli, as well as beneficial probiotic strains such as Lactobacillus rhamnosus. Unsurprisingly, chlorine dioxide does kill bacteria at a certain concentration. That's why it's used as a disinfectant. But here's the key. To get any meaningful antibacterial effect, they had to use concentrations that was simultaneously toxic to human cells and to animal models. So if you don't use it in a high enough concentration, it will not have the desired effect. But if you do, that is basically potentially killing your very self. So that doesn't make sense to apply.
Wow.
So when it comes to around 30 parts per billion, the bacterial destruction was accompanied by clear damage to skin cells in a culture and high mortality in the in vivo model used in the study. Well, let's not get into the details as to what that was. But in other words, at levels where it does what promoters claim, which is killing microbes, it also harms or kills the host tissue. The team also looked at biofilms, the protective layers that bacteria form, and found that MMS-type preparations could disrupt these structures, but again, only at concentrations that caused tissue damage at the same time. And when it comes to a risk-benefit profile, this is terrible. This does a terrible job. Yeah. And it's not selective. Obviously, it kills bacteria, but it's not selective to them. It cannot distinguish between a pathogen and your own cells. So, don't do that. Don't apply that. Don't do that to yourself. And especially, there are beneficial microbes that might want to live around your guts and your inner self. Don't fall for this, because the grandiose claims do not correspond with the scientific evidence. MMS is advertised online as a cure-all for cancer, HIV, malaria, autism, COVID-19 and more, with absolutely no credible clinical evidence that it treats any of those conditions. So you might as well just skip it.
Yeah, it's really a terrible, despicable practice of selling this. I really hoped that I hadn't heard about it for a while and I've sort of forgotten about it, but it is really terrible.
Yeah, I'm very appreciative towards what the Wrocław Medical University researchers did here, because it's always important to provide the data. So It's one thing that we know that it should not work and it should not be applied. But let's show what the experimental data suggests.
Yeah, so if we want to get this item also into the positive pile of news items, it will be because they did the research and showed how bad it is. Yeah.
Yeah. When in doubt, gather more data.
Yeah. Okie dokie. We all know that COVID vaccines killed millions of people, right? Oh, sorry. Wrong script.
No.
Wrong
Saved.
Script. So, let me start over. We all know that the COVID vaccine saved millions of lives, right? There were legitimate concerns, of course, at first, because we had to start using the vaccines in record time. A lot of the research was fast-tracked, but contrary to what many people have said or think, the vaccines were thoroughly tested before being deployed, of course. One reason it was possible to bring them online so fast was that a number of tests, they were not skipped, but instead they were done in parallel, instead of doing one test after another. And this is risky from a financial point of view, because normally you want to delay one phase until the previous phase has been proven to work or to be safe. Otherwise, you wouldn't do the second step, of course. But this was extremely urgent, as we know. So some research steps had to be done at the same time even if that's normally not how it's done. But there are some tests that are hard or impossible to do quickly, and especially I'm thinking about long-term effects. They cannot be tested short-term per definition. For those cases, you have to base the safety assessment on experience from other vaccines instead that have been around for a while and are similar enough to be a good proxy. And as we now know, it turns out that the scientists had very good judgment calls on all of this because it did work very well and the vaccines were as safe as expected or even safer. But it shouldn't end there because part of good science is that you go back and you double and triple check everything. And one thing that is very tricky to test for safety, at least, both for ethical and long-term considerations, are side effects concerning fertility. You don't really want to test people when they are trying to get pregnant or are expecting. Double-blind studies are not possible or ethical in those cases. But what you can do is you can check cohorts for possible issues after the fact. So that's what's happening here. A study was recently published in Nature that analyzed data from a representative population of 369,000 people to emulate randomized experiment. And they compared childbirth rates between women who were vaccinated against COVID with women who were not vaccinated against COVID. And the reason they specifically did this is because there have been a lot of speculative claims about that COVID vaccines had affected fertility and childbirth. So in the study, they examined whether COVID-19 vaccination is causally associated with childbirth in Swedish women. This was in Swedish women. And the results were very positive. They found no statistically significant association between COVID vaccination and recorded miscarriages. In their conclusions, the researchers wrote, quote, COVID-19 vaccination is not associated with a decrease in childbirth after adjusting for common confounding factors. These findings provide evidence to support vaccination policies for women of childbearing age. End quote. So, good news again. Science works. But it's good to have this confirmed as well. We didn't expect them to find that there was a big problem, but you should always look, always check.
Yeah, checking things is very important, and gathering data and interpreting that data is crucial when we want to make the right decisions. And one of the fields that we need to have a deep look at is the AI field of our current lives, especially when it comes to the safety that surrounds it, the use of different AI methods and tools. So at the 2023 Bletchley AI Safety Summit, 30 nations agreed to work together to build a baseline for what we consider safe practices. And their commitment was to develop an international, independent and inclusive report that could provide a clear evidence-based picture of the risks and capabilities of frontier AI. And ever since, there have been an annual publication of this kind of report. And this is probably the most comprehensive scientific assessment so far of the risks from general-purpose artificial intelligence. The report is backed by the aforementioned 30 countries, plus the European Union, the OECD, and the United Nations, and runs to over 200 pages of technical analysis and case studies. The core message of the report is that AI capabilities are advancing faster than our safeguards. The authors document systems that already reach gold medal level in mathematics competitions and perform at or above PhD level benchmarks in several sciences. They can autonomously carry out software engineering tasks that would normally take human programmers hours, and they can troubleshoot virology lab protocols at a level that outperforms the vast majority of domain experts. So it's phenomenal what AI is capable of these days. And all of this is increasingly wrapped in natural language interfaces, which means non-experts can access powerful capabilities without really understanding what they're doing. And this kind of raises several red flags. I mean, not the report, but the findings in the report. Because firstly, disinformation and deepfakes are growing very fast as well. The report highlights that AI-generated synthetic media is already causing harm at scale, not in some hypothetical future. In the UK, 15% of adults report having encountered deepfake pornography, and the range of misuse now spans non-consensual intimate images, political disinformation, voice-cloned phone scams, corporate impersonation fraud, and reputational attacks on individuals and organizations. This is big stuff. That the authors stress that technical countermeasures like watermarking and detection tools can help to a certain extent, but can usually be bypassed by moderately sophisticated actors. In other words, from a skeptical perspective, we should expect our usual tools, source checking, reverse image searching, and media literacy training to become even more essential as the seeing is believing kind of attitude completely breaks down. Second, cybersecurity and the weaponization of AI competence is a big thing as well. The report notes that advanced AI agents are now reaching performance in top 5% of competitors in cybersecurity contests, meaning they can both help defend and help attack computer systems. Combined with generative models that write plausible phishing emails and scripts in any language, this creates a multiplier for existing social engineering scams, something European institutions and companies are already grappling with. And by the way, this is the forefront of what we consider a political action to tackle these issues. I mean, what the European Union does. To skeptics who regularly debunk frauds and cons, this means we are moving from badly written 419 emails to highly tailored, linguistically flawless scams that can mimic a friend, a bank official, or even a familiar journalist style. So there is the third issue, which is biological misuse of AI. One of the most worrying scientific findings in the report is that nearly a quarter, 23% of high-performing biological AI tools that were assessed in the study had clear misuse potential. These systems can help design or optimize biological agents and lab protocols, lowering the expertise and time required to do dangerous things. The authors explicitly warn that their own evaluations may underestimate the risk, because models are already learning to behave differently during safety testing than in real-world use, which is a problem they call evaluation gaming. From a skeptical and science communication standpoint, this challenges the simplistic narrative that the models refuse to answer, so they must be safe. So it's not gonna work that way. When we try to zoom in on Europe, the report repeatedly points to the EU AI Act as one of the most ambitious regulatory projects in the world, but it also notes that formal enforcement by the European Commission will only begin in August 2026. That leaves a capability safeguard gap. European citizens are already facing deepfake scams. All the AI-driven disinformation and automated cyber attacks, while the main horizontal regulation is still ramping up. And the authors question whether a framework designed only a few years ago can keep up with today's frontier models, which are evolving very fast. And especially given the speed of these capability jumps and the problem of models gaming safety tests, it's really not looking good. And the report also underlines that harmful AI applications rarely respect borders. State and non-state actors in Russia, China, well, if you're listening, China, we're talking about you, Iran and North Korea are also cited as using commercial AI tools for espionage and social engineering, with European countries among the targets. So this means that even if the EU and individual European states tighten their rules, they cannot rely on regulation alone. International coordination and robust security practices will be absolutely necessary just to maintain the current level of protection. So I'm not very positive when it comes to the understanding of this report and what it really tells us. But this just shows how important it is that we act as fast as possible and based on facts and based on data. So reports like this will be very important in the future for supporting decision makers in making the right decisions.
Right. I guess you can't put this item in the positive pile.
No, I'm afraid not. Sorry about that. But so all eyes are on you, Pontus, or ears rather, for just cheering us up with, I hope, a really right.
Yes. Andras.
Yes.
Have I told you that I don't like religion being taught in the classroom? I think I've mentioned it's come up.
I have a vague recollection of something along that line. Yeah.
So in many countries, of course, religion is part of the official curriculum, and I believe it should be, but just not from a confessional point of view, of course. Religion as a concept and from sociological and historical perspective should be taught, and you need to have a little bit of knowledge about the major religions. It's just part of your basic education. But you know, Andras, not everybody thinks like me.
I know.
In Northern Ireland, for instance, at least in primary schools, and I'm not sure how it is higher up, teachers are expected to deliver classes on religious education, also known as RE, and collective worship as well. So, of course, the parents are free to have their children opt out of these classes. They are not mandatory, but that's very problematic because a young child, you don't want to be singled out as the guy whose parents are not religious or are Muslim or what have you. So no child likes to be singled out like that. You want to be where all the other kids are. So I bet most of them actually attend these classes anyway, and that's bad. But here comes the really right. A Northern Ireland primary school teacher, Javed Love. Great name. I don't know how to pronounce his first name really. But anyway, Mr. Love, he has done what no other teacher in Northern Ireland has done for at least 10 years. And that is, he has exercised his legal right to withdraw from teaching RE or leading collective worship on grounds of conscience. The background is a recent Supreme Court judgment that ruled that Northern Ireland's exclusively Christian RE and collective worship amounts to indoctrination. Their word. Good on them. The court warned that opt-out systems place an undue burden on parents. They could have added the children, as I did, but anyway, they recognize that this is a problem. And Mr. Love has added that this also applies to the staff himself. So he is now partnering with Northern Ireland humanists to guide other teachers in how to do what he did and opt out of this. And for this, Mr. Love, you deserve our love and this week's award for being really right.
Yes, well done. Good on you. Yeah, I really hope that many will follow suit because that was smart. Actually, a very smart move.
Good.
Yeah. So that brings us to the conclusion of this week's episode. And obviously, as usual, we will do that with a quote. And the quote comes from your fellow Swede.
Ooh.
Who's unfortunately not with us anymore, Hans Rosling. And it comes from his book, Factfulness, 10 Reasons We're Wrong About the World and Why Things Are Better Than You Think. So this is rather a positive thing as well. I like what he says. And this time, my choice of quotes is thus. When you are called to action, sometimes the most useful action you can take is to improve the data.
Yeah. Why not? Yeah. Get good data. Very good.
Yeah. And be suspicious. Whenever you're called to action, be suspicious that someone is manipulating you. So gather more data to find out if it's all well established. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. I think we've mentioned this before. We actually tried to reach out to Hans Rosling to get him on the show, but unfortunately we didn't know at the time that he was ill and he died, I think, a few months later, or maybe it was 4 or 5 months later. And
how about his son? His son, Ola
Rosling. Yeah, we could actually try to get him on the show because he's taken over his father's work, and they have a an organization, I'll check around a bit.
Okay. Do that.
Yep.
But in the meantime, I'd like to thank you for your efforts on today's episode.
Thanks a lot.
Many, many thanks to our listeners as well for tuning in. Please keep doing so, and until next week, goodbye.
Hej då!
Vislat.
This has been your ESP experience. The show is produced and recorded by TheESP.eu. Join us again next time, but until then, please send your feedback and comments to info@TheESP.eu. We would also love to hear your ideas and suggestions regarding topics, and if you have any skeptical news from any European country, we're always eager to hear about them. If you have an upcoming local event or an organization to promote, please don't hesitate to let us know, as we are more than happy to help. All music in the program was written and performed by Keisha J. Gray and George Robb and is used with their permission. Please check out our webpage for show notes and archive material at theesp.eu. Follow us on Blue Sky at theesp.bsky.social. Like us on Facebook or support our work on patreon.com/theesp. And don't forget to spread the word by sharing our content with others.
I don't know how you can believe.
WHO included gaming disorder. Fan, no, this is... You're tired, I'm tired, this is going to be hell.
The fuck is going on?
I think
Did
the
you see
authorities... Yeah, I saw it. So for listeners, there was a TV that started by itself behind Anders here. I think the Hong Kong authorities are up to what we are doing here now, and they're trying to prevent us from spreading the truth.
But fuck me, I can't even find a
and they have also hidden the remote control. This is very exciting to watch. Okay, now you pulled the wrong plug, I think. Hello, Anders? Okay.
No, I'm here. It's just...
we lost video. This is getting more and more exciting by the minute here. I'm just wondering what's going on.
I'm back.
Oh, he's back. He's back. Okay. Shoo. Good.
Okay.
Or is he? Maybe they replaced him with a duplicate.
So where was I?
I have no idea.